So you've been thinking about leaving the rat race behind and dreaming about a simpler life living off-grid. But every single time that you see one of these homestead influencers talk to you about how much they spent on their little project, you're sort of just left with the idea that the only way you could actually accomplish that for yourself would be to invent some form of time travel and take all of your money and go back to 2009 and invest it in Bitcoin. But what if I told you it's not rocket surgery? And regardless of what these a-holes are saying, you actually could afford to create your own off-grid homestead without even having to worry about the ramifications of breaking the laws of physics. In this video, we're going to answer the question if off-grid living and homesteading is something that you can actually afford. So, pardon me. Let's talk about it. The allure of off-grid living. Over the last 10 years or so, off-grid living and homesteading have become extremely popular. And I think I understand why. The economy on paper is doing aight, but for most of us it feels like it just keeps getting worse every day. Trust and confidence in the government is at what I imagine is considered an all-time low, which is hard to believe considering the pure gems of decisions that are coming out of that Washington, D.C. area of the world. So it's no wonder that people are looking to become more self-sufficient, self-reliant, be able to take charge of more things in their lives. Maybe they don't agree with food policy of this or the last administration. So they want to be able to grow their own food and know where their water's coming from and what's in it, etc., etc., etc. This has also given rise to the off-grid and homestead influencer. It's kind of crazy. Off-grid living and homesteading are among the top 10 biggest niches as far as where the interest is at on all of YouTube. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you've probably seen at least one or two others in the category. One of my biggest hide chappers about this particular niche of video on the internet is that project breakdowns and look how much I spent on this videos have a tendency to make it really difficult for the average person to try and pursue this lifestyle. Now, whether the purpose of doing this is to let you know how much it actually costs, or to discourage you from pursuing it yourself, or to explain how expensive it is so that it appears exclusive, making the person talking about it feel less empty inside and useless as a human being. I don't know, but I don't like it. Regardless, I can assure you, it can be done with very little in the way of resources, time, skills, and even money up front. Now that may mean that for a period of time you're going to have to change your romanticized idea of what off-grid living and homesteading is, and you will definitely have to put off buying fainting goats for another time. Debunking the myth of off-grid homestead affordability. Now, I probably wouldn't be too far off if I guessed that the reason that you're looking into this lifestyle in the first place is that because for you, the economy kind of sucks. It's working exactly as designed for other folks, but for you, probably not so good. Everything is so much more expensive than it's ever been before, and so you spend some time looking on Zillow for farmland, and all you find is these massive properties that are perfect for a commercial farm, and you just can't justify to yourself spending $1 million on bare dirt. It doesn't seem like it's a logical solution to the problem you're trying to solve, right? At least it's totally not the kind of thing that's going to get you off the hamster wheel that you're trying to jump off now. But let me ask you a question. Is your plan for this lifestyle to grow a crop or raise an animal with the specific purpose of taking that crop or animal to market in order to be a farmer or a rancher? Probably not. You want to build a little off-grid homestead so you can take care of your own needs. Maybe grow a little garden and have a few animals that get you some chickens and some eggs and maybe a bunch of tomatoes and kind of live off of what you can generate for yourself, which is the difference between a farm and a homestead. Farms are a commercial operation. Homesteads are a piece of property that you develop to be able to take care of all of your needs. Have a little house, have a little shop, garden, maybe some animals. But it's not a commercial operation, which means you do not need farmland for a homestead. You just need some land. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be that high quality of land. You can build a beautiful homestead on it. Yes, buying land is the first stumbling block on this little adventure you're going on, but it's more of like stepping on a Lego with no shoes on than it is trying to scale the side of a brutalist skyscraper. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of cheap land out there. And you can even avoid qualifying for loans and dealing with banks by going the owner-financed route like we did. You can use platforms like billyland.com and thelandlimited.com, both that offer killer land for really low prices, super low down payments, no qualifications. As long as you can pay the down payment and a small monthly payment, you can take ownership of the land and develop it the way you want. This is a process I wrote an entire book about. A book that walks you through every step of the way, including how not to get scammed on this whole thing, because yes, you want to be careful of that kind of thing. It's also a book that you can download for whatever you want to pay, even if what you want to pay is nothing. And I've read it. It's pretty good. Link in description. Now there's lots of other systems that you're going to also have to establish once you do get the land. And you can establish those systems over time. I actually checked the Off-Grid Living and Homesteading rule book, and I couldn't find anything in there that said that you had to have all of the money necessary to establish your entire homestead up front. Otherwise, you couldn't do it. I don't make the rules. And I know what you're thinking. Oh yeah, Jason, how am I supposed to pay for all of those systems over time if to even do this in the first place, I'm going to have to quit my cushy office job in order to move out to BFE because that's where all the cheap land is, right, Jason? Well, thanks for asking, Nancy, or Kevin, or whatever your name is. There's nothing that says you can't live off-grid and still go get a job, or any other number of ways to make a living, make ends meet, keep income flowing in, and still live this kind of a lifestyle, but that's a video for another day. Now, sure, in a small rural community, you might end up getting paid less to do the job that you want to do. But if your expenses have been cut by 3/4, you'd still end up having more money left over to do the kind of projects that you want to do on your property. Now, it's also been my experience that if you have any kind of marketable skills, when you go into a small rural community, more than likely, those skills are going to be missing in the overall skill pool of that community. If you're the more entrepreneurial type, you might even just be able to create a service that you can do that no one else in the community does and support yourself that way. When we first moved out here, the community was lacking music teachers like almost immediately. Cari got hired on at 2 different schools to teach music, and that's how we supported ourselves through the time period when we first got here, and I was doing all the land clearing and, other work that was, in hindsight, probably a waste of time, and also going slowly mad. But that's also a story for another video. In my opinion, it really just comes down to this question. If off-grid living and homesteading is the lifestyle that you want, would you accomplish that goal faster by continuing to do what you're doing, saving up whatever you have available to you after you pay all the bills with the increased cost of living in the city you live in? Or would you get there faster by slashing your expenses by 75%, even if you're making less money, and roughing it for a little while you establish the systems that you need and want? And if I'm being honest, all you really have to do is look in your savings account right now, and that ought to tell you how much you're capable of saving in your current situation, and probably give you the answer to that question right there. But listen, I don't want it to come off like I'm saying you're going to be living for free if you do this. There are things that you're going to need that are going to cost money, especially at the beginning, which leads me to my next point, a realistic budget breakdown. So I get asked all the time, how much money should I have saved up before we go off on this adventure? And that's kind of a tricky question because it comes down to 2 basic factors, at least in my opinion. The first one is personal preference, like how much money do you want to have saved up before you go off on this adventure? The second is personal confidence in your ability to make things happen. Now, I know I've told our story a bunch of different times, but I want to kind of give you an idea of how I felt about this whole thing when we were getting ready to leave. So you may know that we started with negative $27 in our bank account when we found the property on Billy Land that we wanted to buy. We decided we were going to buy that land, and the down payment was $300. So we had a yard sale. That yard sale produced just over $300, and we used that money to put down on the land, did all the paperwork, and all of a sudden it was ours. And then I gave a 30-day notice to our landlord. So we had 30 days at that point to skedaddle. I'm not saying to you that this is how you should do it. I'm just saying that this is how we did it, so regardless of your situation, it's probably possible. In that 30 days, we sold everything else that we had. Yard sales, Craigslist, calling up friends that had said that they liked a thing that we had, all of that kind of stuff, and we raised the money that we did. We got a little travel trailer, a beat-to-hell SUV. We were at the end of this time, and we're like, ready to go. So we thought to ourselves, okay, how much is gas gonna cost for us to pull this trailer up to the new property? We figured it was probably going to be about $1,000. We had, I think, like $1,600 left of all the money that we had made. It ended up costing us $1,250 in gas to drive up here pulling the trailer. And then the places that we stopped for food, because we had 2 kids at the time, a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old, we stopped by the Jelly Belly factory on the way up and had them go through all of that. That was really fun. And anyway, when we arrived here, we had about 30 days worth of canned food, which we had just kind of taken from our old house, and we had $300 left. So that's how much that mattered to us. And also, I was very, very confident that between the two of us, we could make whatever happened that we needed to make happen to be able to keep ourselves fed and get all the necessities that we needed during that time. It was a huge struggle. I wish I had triple the amount that we brought here. It would have been a lot easier, but we didn't. Luckily, like I said earlier, Cari was able to pick up a music teacher job like within the first couple of weeks that we were out here. And so it wasn't but about a month after that she had started getting paychecks. So it was perfect. That experience taught me a couple of things. One, you should probably have more money than you think you're going to need. I was young yet. But at the same time, had I stayed where we were at, always being broke even though I made good money, chances are we never would have left. So you have to weigh those things against each other. And had I done the following, we could have even been more confident that we were going to be able to make it go right, which was looking at the groups, the Facebook groups, the Craigslist gig postings, job postings, all of those sorts of things in the community to find out what sort of skills the community itself was missing. Cari got 2 different schools to hire her as a music teacher off of a Craigslist ad. I did a bunch of metal scrapping, handyman work, helping with cleaning out properties after a person had passed away, those sorts of things, because they were things that nobody in the community was willing to do, and we were able to charge a fair amount for those things and keep ourselves going. I wasn't as focused on that because I was at the property trying to, set things up, having absolutely no skills with which to do that, but for the 3rd time, that's a video for another day. I would suggest assessing your skills. What are the things that you're good at? And then looking at those next door groups, Facebook groups, Craigslist posts, all of those sorts of things to see what of your skills could be useful in that community. Because that's one thing about these small rural communities is there's always going to be skill gaps in them. Because a lot of times when people are raised in small communities and they have a skill, once they get to a certain point in that profession, they take it somewhere else, leaving a hole for you to fill. The worst thing you can do, though, is go, my skill is this, and I'm going to use that skill to make money regardless of what the skill gaps are in that community, because you're not actually adding anything to the community by doing that. If somebody else in that small community already does that trade, already does that skill or service, all you're doing is diluting the value of it for the people who already depend on that particular niche of that community. And I promise you, there is no discomfort like going to a block party and finding out that the entire neighborhood blames you for the fact that Grandma Gladys can't go to bingo on Tuesday nights anymore because some city slicker moved in, some carpetbagger moved in on her tomato growing, heirloom pepper seed selling, you know what I mean? You don't want to make an enemy out of Grandma Gladys, okay? She makes the best shine in town. The rest of the community is going to hold that against you. I'm telling you, don't do it, okay? Find a missing thing in your community and add to the community. You'll always be busy. You will always have something to do, and you'll always be able to exchange for money, for materials, for produce, for meat. I mean, we've bartered for literally everything you could think of having to do with our survival, including our house. If you don't know that story, I did some electrical work in solar, and Cari gave some music lessons in exchange for the house we live in now. You know, it's a single wide mobile, it's nothing special, but it was essentially free because we found something that was necessary, something that was needed in the community, and something that we were willing to do in exchange for something that we needed. That's how it works. So, don't go upsetting Grandma Gladys, okay? She was born on the 4th of July. She's an Independence baby. She'll have your number. And she don't take no guff from these swines. I'm putting you on notice. There are going to be projects that you're going to want to get done for your own personal safety as well as comfort. On one hand, you could have the money saved up to buy the materials to do that project, or you could try and salvage materials or use materials that you could forage from your own land. This is where the personal preference part comes into it. I will tell you this, though. A lot of the things that you're going to want to buy, like, for example, generators, solar panels, batteries, little power stations. Maybe you start off with just a little power station that comes with a little solar panel that keeps it charged so you can charge your cell phone and have some lights at night. And you build from there. Those items are significantly easier to acquire back in civilization. When we originally came out here, I got some of the things that I thought we were going to need, like an electric chainsaw, like a plug-in electric chainsaw. No buyer's remorse on that one. 5 stars. Would recommend. I remember meeting a guy off of Craigslist at a gas station and buying a generator, like a 13,000 watt generator, for $200. It was used out of the back of his truck. Right now, it's being used to hold up my toolbox over there down by the shop because it lasted exactly 6 months and then was toast. But I figured I was going to need the generator to run the chainsaw to clear the land so that we could have some space, right? Yeah, don't get an electric chainsaw. Not even the new battery ones. Just don't do it. Unless you're just going to be limbing trees. If you're going to actually be doing any cutting of trees, get a gas chainsaw. Get a good one, get a Stihl or a Husky, and then never have to replace it, because I've been through a number of cheap chainsaws. One time I asked my old mentor, the 92-year-old rancher, Will, who I've done videos about, if I could borrow his chainsaw, and he looked at me and he said, you know, asking to borrow a man's chainsaw is just like asking to borrow his toothbrush. And I was like, and he was like, and I was like, so no then? And he's like, yeah, no. That's a lesson that you don't have to learn the hard way through embarrassment and shame. You're welcome. So I recommend figuring out the things that you'll actually use and that you're actually going to need, mainly for your comfort, sanity and making sure that you have all the basic necessities going. Get those things before you come out. Don't save up money and then buy them once you're out here, because they'll be cheaper there. You have it sent to you through Amazon or something like that. It's really easy. It can get, the logistics of buying that kind of stuff when you're out in the middle of the woods can get complicated. But you know, you're gonna need 2x4s and 2x6s and plywood and roofing and all that kind of stuff. You can get that locally, but I will also warn you, in a small rural community, you'll probably pay more for those things. So you might want to drive further away to a Home Depot so you can pay a reasonable price for those things. Which brings us to things like gasoline, right? You need to know how far away things are compared to the amount of gas mileage that your vehicle gets to get from your property to the place you need to go to get the supplies that you need to do your projects, have food, re-up on water, all of that kind of stuff. I cannot tell you how many times we ran out of gas somewhere between our property and the gas station that's 22 miles away. So you need to make sure that you have the resources to make those trips back and forth. Have a gas can full of gas, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that you need to budget for as well. Even if you have solar panels, you're gonna want a generator, because half of the year your solar panels are gonna produce like a tenth of what you think they're gonna produce during the winter and the cloudy days in spring and fall. So you're gonna want a generator, but you're also gonna wanna make sure that you have gasoline for the generator. Otherwise, you won't be able to charge your phones, have lights at night, all the things that you use electricity for. With us, we're up to the point where the only thing we don't use electricity for is cooking. We have a propane stove and oven. I like cooking with gas more than I like cooking with electrical. And we have come to the point now, after 13 years, of having everything that you could want, even a little dishwasher. It's super cute. If I want to be able to use those things on those days when there's no sunshine, like the sun just disappeared from behind my back, which I'm not going to say I had anything to do with that, but you know, I know some people. Then you have to run the generator, and you have to budget for that as well. Power tools while you're doing the bigger projects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to think with all of that kind of stuff. Don't think that you're going to get out here and just, I'm going to, go around and collect used cooking oil and make biodiesel in my backyard and run an old Mercedes-Benz with an inverter off of the battery to power my homestead, which is not a terrible idea, but it's probably going to take you a while to get the infrastructure set up to be able to do that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to lie. That's actually a fire idea. See? Yeah, I know a guy. You're also going to need food and water. And unless you're planning on hunter-gathering it right off the bat, which I know some of you probably can. I'm sure some of you have read books on how to do that. Let me just tell you, it's harder than it sounds, especially if you're coming from a city where your idea of hunter-gathering is going to Chipotle and doing the face to get more meat put into your burrito bowl. It doesn't really work like that out here. So make sure that you have a budget for, however long you think it's going to take you to get enough income coming in that you can routinely buy nutritious foods until you get your garden and your chickens set up, at which point you'll eat a lot of greens, a lot of tomatoes, and a lot of eggs. So even when you get that, you're going to want to budget for anything else that you might want, aside from those things. I say this from a place of experience. Even though when we showed up here, we had a month worth of canned foods that we thought was going to last us, well, at least a month. Turns out, when you start clearing land and you haven't been super active, I was an electrician, but I was the type of an electrician that would wear a polo shirt to work. You know what I mean? And it's true. I was deathly afraid of brooms. Never swept up after myself. So when I got out here and I was doing this kind of work where I'm just scything the long grass and using a bow saw to cut through limbs because I'd ran out of gas for my generator to run my electric chainsaw. Such a dumb purchase. Turns out you burn more calories and you need to eat more. So that 30 days worth of food only lasted us about 2 weeks. And because we only had $300 left, that didn't buy us a whole lot of food. Luckily, with Cari getting her music teacher job and me doing some odd jobs here and there and bringing a little bit of extra money, we were able to make ends meet. And as you can probably tell, we didn't starve. So there is that. So how much money should you have saved up before you come out on this adventure? Well, I guess the practical answer is figure out what all of those expenses are going to cost you over how much time you feel like it's going to take you to find some sort of income based on what we were talking about earlier by figuring out what the community itself needs. Dollars, pay for all the things in a month, multiplied by number of months you think it's going to take you to be able to consistently make that many dollars. It's pretty simple. But again, it's going to come down to what your preference is and how much confidence you have in your ability to make things happen. And like you learned from our story earlier, I can be counted upon for two things. One is to find the most arduous route to the easiest way to do anything. And two, I can be counted upon to have more confidence than what is necessary or probably justifiable to accomplish anything as well. Just as an aside, I am planning on doing a whole series of videos that kind of compare the cost, resource, and time differences between DIY and professionally done projects, as well as a series of videos on all the different ways throughout the last 13 years that Cari and I have been able to make money to make this lifestyle actually happen. If you mix those videos, which I plan to do, with the 250 videos that answer pretty much every other question that I could possibly think of on the subject, you could see why I would consider my channel to be, sort of a valuable little tool for you to have in your back pocket before you go on this adventure. So, you're welcome. The $57,000 question of the hour is, can you afford off-grid living and homesteading? I see this question being answered in two ways. First, the practical answer, which is, I've just given you all the factors to consider. You tell me in the comments below. And if you have any trouble finding the comments section, it's right under where the link for my book is. So if you want to download that too, kind of like follow the path. But then there's the more philosophical, ethereal, some would say esoteric answer, which is that when Cari and I started on this adventure, we were as broke as anyone you've probably ever known. We were blessed with the outdoor, off-grid survival skills the good Lord saw fit to give a potato. And although I am extremely overconfident for no apparent reason, I am also as stubborn and dumb as a pallet of boxes, of cases, of bags, of rocks. All those things being true, if we could do it, I'm pretty confident you could too. So there's my answer, and I'll catch you in the next one.